purposes they were created for. If our Constitution, when we have an imminent threat to our national security, as it happened in that fatal, bloody weekend, allows us to implement this state of exception. These measures inspire the following laws under the coverage of international treaties and allow us to react against their enemies, to act against the enemies of Salvadoran people. And sadly for us, and as a popular saying goes, our enemies were also Salvadorans. They were members of criminal organizations, gang members that had a chain of command, gang members that had the capacity to decide the destiny of every person living in their neighborhoods, in the communities, in the towns where they implemented power. The strengthening of all over the measures for control and the expansion of the criminal collective responsibility are manifestations, not as some people say. It is not that we're going back. I believe it's the opposite. Under the direction of the executive branch that has an influence in the formulation of the state policies, and especially the criminal policies, we're seeing an evolution in the doctrine of Ford laws. And it is true. This progress also presents challenges. When we talk about human rights, of course, constitutional guarantees, there must be a balance between punishment and the law. But I can also tell you that the Salvadoran criminal law looks for a consolidation of a criminal model that is efficient and that respects human dignity for the trial of these crimes. Now, all of this theory, all of this that I mentioned, with all of this, I have to present which is the role of the new Attorney General's office. We have to be an institution. Do we have to be an institution similar to the one that we had in the past, where the Attorney General was elected out of these agreements, of these hidden agreements? In El Salvador, the Attorney General is elected by the Legislative Assembly for the period of 3 years. You need the majority of votes to elect Attorney General. And when I arrived at office, the Attorney General's office, I found an institution that was embedded by these political parties. These prosecutors belong to Arena, to one political party. These other prosecutors belong to this other political party. There were some other prosecutors that belong to another political party. So they took these politicians to this institution that I love and that I know very well, but they had created a system where everybody protected everybody, and at some point maybe we're going to damage each other, but we're not going to damage each other a lot. There was this agreement of self-protection in the institution, and at the same time, the institution wasn't having a human development. They were not working on their human resources. They didn't have investment on infrastructures, and we were not thinking about digital transformation. I believe I have the advantage that I have been a prosecutor since 1995. I just left the institution for 3 years because of some disagreements in the year 2017, and I saw all the evolutions and all the potential of this Attorney General's office that was manipulated by political interest. Once I was outside of the institution, I saw how in some way they were eager, they wanted to take the director of the police, Mauricio Arreazachicas, to trial, no matter the legal arguments for the legislator. What they wanted to have is they wanted the head of the director of the police officer to show the strength that the assembly had by that time. So, because of the decision of the assembly that allowed me to join the institution, we started working on a plan, and the first step of this working plan was to go back to the origins. What do I mean? It was to look for our natural ally that joins us in all the investigations of crime, the National Police. The first picture that we take at the office of the Attorney General is myself with all the officers that were in charge of the police, and I sent a clear message. The police officers are not our enemies, they're our companions that will join us in our battles, and that's why that we have to protect them at each one of the operations they conduct. Our soldiers as well, the soldiers that were joining the public security duties to prevent crimes. We were preparing a new system for investigations, an investigation system based on trust, not in this lack of trust, in which the Attorney General's office was not just going to be isolated from the other institutions, in which autonomy was misused to say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to follow the recommendation of the Ministry of Justice. I don't want to follow the recommendation of the Ministry of Defense, or I don't want to follow the recommendations of the President. It is not about that. Why? Because the Attorney General's office, I repeat, they had to go back to the origins, and that means, in the first place, to modify this, to change this vision of to change this vision of the institution, which had to adjust to the constitutional mandate established in Article 193 of our Constitution, which is to defend the interest of the state and the interest of society. It is as easy as that. It is easy on the concept, but it's such a difficult task with all of its implication. Our mission is to protect the state, to protect the officials of the state, prevent all the crimes related or affecting the Salvadoran state, and at the same time to conduct objective investigations for the sake of victims, so we can accompany these victims throughout the criminal process and to be able to say to the victims, no, you're wrong when you accuse this person. So that situation, this juggling work of the prosecutors is what we expect from them. They are expected to be objective, to conduct investigations in a professional way, to look for the help of the police because they are the ones that are going to help them and guide them on the field. They have to understand that the police officers, when they get involved, sadly, in these confrontations, we're going to take them and we're going to investigate. But no, that's the opposite. We're going to investigate first to assign responsibility. It is not about going back to the past where the prosecutors and police officers couldn't even have a conversation. So this harmony that have to exist in the security ecosystem is the one that we are called to keep. How do you achieve that? You achieve it in the first place working with the most valuable asset of the Attorney General's office, which is the its personal prosecutors, the people that work with the judiciary, with the administration. You have to train them constantly. You have to offer them better salaries. You have to give them better working conditions, better equipment, better resources, so they can conduct every activity. That is the investment. We are the only institution from the executive branch that has made this investment. Attorney General's office in El Salvador is placing itself as a reference in the region, and we hope that we will be this reference in Latin America. We have the best prosecutors. We have the prosecutors with the best salary. We have the biggest investment in infrastructure that has been made since the 1952 when the Attorney General's office was created. All of this is because we have someone at the head of the executive branch who believes in the Salvadoran institutions. And if this person believes in these institutions, we are called to be officials who do their job. And we have to do this job in the best possible way, a constant way, always serving the people of El Salvador, because that is what will improve our institutions. Besides taking care of our main assets or human assets, the next step was to improve our infrastructure. Attorney General's office since 24 years ago. We didn't have our own facilities with all of the implications of that. Why? Because we were renting this house. During a certain amount of time, I paid you for the facilities, and the institutions always had this uncertainty. We couldn't invest in better infrastructure, in more assets, without being able of investing in the human capital. That's not right. I think that in the Attorney General's office, we don't want to be a big institution, but we want to be a strong institution, an institution where prosecutors have the adequate infrastructure all over the country to address the average of 100,000 cases that come to our institution and to give a timely response to them and being able to comply with their constitutional mandate to bring justice and defend legality. After this investment in infrastructure, we are making progress and we're getting into a third phase, which is the digital transformation of the institution. But we know that this is something that we cannot do alone. It is something that we cannot just leave for the prosecutors, because we understand that we're part of a system. We're part of a justice system in which this Security Cabinet, the Supreme Court of Justice, Attorneys General Office, public defenders, they come together at a certain point, and the only actor that is constant in all the development of this process since crime happens, the only institution that is constantly there is the Attorney General's office, which accompanies until the moment there is a conviction. And that's why we understand that our main enemy in this moment, the main enemy that we have to defeat, are gangs. Why? Because we're not going to rest until the last one of these 90,000 people detained receive their punishment for the kidnapping of the Salvadoran society. That is something where we're not giving a step back, and we're going to fight using the laws in whatever way is necessary to be able to achieve that goal. Not because that is something that the Attorney General wants, or because something that the President of the Assembly wants, or the Minister of Justice, the Minister of the Defense, the Justice of the Supreme Court of Justice. It is not because of that that we are working on that. We're working on this because that is what Salvadoran society deserves. It is what every Salvadoran deserves. Nowadays, Salvadorans, and because of all of these actions, nowadays they can enjoy these same rights, these rights that are part of the constitution of the country, the rights that are part of the international treaties, and the rights that the NGOs and international organizations mention only when they talk about criminals. Nowadays, Salvadorans can enjoy the right to freedom, the right to life, the right to health, which is improving. And all of that is possible when there is this willingness within the institutions, not only at the Attorney General's office, when they have this willingness to do what the law instructs. Because at the end, we as officials, we are complying, or we're trying to comply in the best possible way with all of the functions that were delegated to us. It is good that we have gotten these results in security, but this should be just a starting point, so we can start improving other areas and we overcome these needs that still exist for many Salvadorans. So I believe that the Attorney General's office nowadays we as prosecutors, we they have understood that they are public servants, that they are there to take care of victims, to give them this quality attention, to understand that as we are fighting our main enemy now, these gangs, these criminal organizations, we also have to keep fighting in other areas that affect us as Salvadorians, in other forms of crime, and that little by little we're going to defeat them. The need of facing other criminal activities, for example, international drug trafficking, which we are fighting every day, sexual crimes, which we want to eliminate or take to their minimum expression one day. Those are the future battlefields in which the Attorney General's office have to take action with the support, of course, of the Security Cabinet, because the Attorney General's office cannot do all of this alone. I don't get tired of mentioning this example. I don't want to be remembered as a prosecutor that in the middle of a pandemic started to accuse a member of the army. I want to be remembered as a prosecutor who, in a way, took the institution and made the institution understand that they are serving Salvadorians, that they have to accompany every action that the executive branch starts, because we make these actions effective. We're the ones in charge of presenting evidence before judges, and we're the ones in charge of fighting, respecting these resolutions, but at the same time presenting alternative resources when these decisions are not adequate. We have to keep rule of law, and that's the mission that I consider Attorney General Office has in all of these different laws and doctrines that have bombed my country during at least the last century and this present century. Important thing is that we Salvadorans, we have found a method based on a common element, this willingness to do things in the right way, and that is what the Attorney General's office is offering. We offer the effort of its prosecutors and this willingness to comply with the law. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope this wasn't boring, and I know that and I know that El Salvador is a very beautiful country. We have excellent people, among the best people in Latin America or the whole world, but at the same time, we want to be better every day, and we want to build a better society every day to benefit our children. Thank you so much for your attention.
Muchas gracias, Attorney General. Thank you very much. Have a small token of our appreciation. Okay, thank you. We have one more presentation before lunch. Folks may be getting hungry. And I have the pleasure of introducing the Honorable Minister Rene Moreno, who's the Minister of Defense in El Salvador. Been serving in that capacity since June 2019 under President Bukele. He's a Vice Admiral in the Salvadoran Navy and the first naval officer in the country in history to lead the Ministry of Defense. As a minister, he's played a key role in implementing El Salvador's Plan Control Territorial, a cornerstone of the government's effort to strengthen public security and reduce crime, and successfully, I may add. His tenure reflects a commitment to discipline, modernization, and the protection of the Salvadorian people. Please help me welcome Admiral Moreno.
Mr. President of the Legislative Assembly, Ernesto Castro, President of the Department of Justice, and magistrates that accompany him, members of the Board of Directors, Congress persons from the Honorable Legislative Assembly of El Salvador, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, and honorable heads of diplomatic missions accredited in El Salvador, General Attorney, President of the Parliamentary Forum of Intelligence and Security, Director of the National Agency of Development and National Design, Excellencies, all present here today who are visiting us, members of the presidential staff, members of international